You're watching her text other men, making plans without you, and treating you like an option while you treat her like a priority. But here's the painful truth most men refuse to face. You already know it's over, you're just too afraid to admit it. Tonight, we're diving into the dark psychology behind why men cling to toxic relationships and the exact moment you need to recognize that walking away isn't giving up. It's reclaiming your power. What I'm about to reveal will either save your relationship, or there's a moment in every man's life when he feels it, that subtle shift in the air between him and the woman he once thought adored him. Her words, once soft and inviting, now come laced with irritation. The gaze that once lingered with warmth now carries judgment. You try to ignore it. You tell yourself she's just tired, that things will settle. But deep down, something ancient and instinctive whispers the truth. Her affection has turned into contempt. Niccolò Machiavelli, in The Prince, warned rulers that love without fear eventually dissolves into rebellion. And so it is in the kingdom of love. When a woman no longer fears losing you, her affection becomes weaponized. At first, it's subtle, a sarcastic comment here, a dismissive laugh there. But make no mistake, these are not harmless gestures. They are the early signs of discontent, the tremors before the collapse of an empire. Contempt, once it enters a relationship, is like poison dropped in fine wine. It does not announce itself loudly. It spreads quietly, invisibly, until every word, every silence carries its bitterness. When a woman begins to look through you instead of at you, she has stopped seeing you as her chosen man and started seeing you as her conquered one. And a conquered man can inspire neither desire nor respect. A woman's love thrives on polarity, on the quiet tension between admiration and mystery. When she feels your essence slipping, when she no longer senses your independence, her instinct shifts from attraction to control. She begins to test your limits, not because she's cruel, but because she wants to know if your strength still stands. Yet most men fail this test. They respond with pleading, over-explaining, or appeasement. They think gentleness will restore harmony, but in truth, it only deepens her disdain. Machiavelli would have said, mercy shown to rebellion only emboldens the rebel. So ask yourself, when did your words start losing weight? When did her laughter become sharper than her silence? When did she stop being moved by your presence and start being irritated by it? Because the moment you feel that shift, you are no longer negotiating love. You are defending sovereignty. This is the part where most men falter. They think more effort will restore affection. They chase, they fix, they justify. But affection cannot be repaired with submission. It can only be rekindled with strength. The more you chase her approval, the less she sees your value. And slowly, contempt becomes her new language of love, sharp, distant, and cold. Understand this truth. A woman does not fall out of love in a single moment. It happens in fragments, with every time she sees you tolerate disrespect, with every time you trade your silence for argument, with every time you put her emotions above your own integrity. And when contempt finally takes root, it rarely reverses, because once respect dies, attraction soon follows. So, what should a man do when he feels her warmth turning into frost? Does he confront her, withdraw, or perhaps does he begin to remind her of the man she once desired by reclaiming the strength she forgot existed? The answer lies not in her reaction, but in his reflection. Tell me, when was the last time she truly looked at you with admiration? And when was the last time you looked at yourself that way? There is no humiliation greater for a man than realizing he's begun to beg for the very thing that once came freely, respect. It's subtle at first. You start explaining yourself more, apologizing for things you didn't even do wrong, trying to calm storms that you didn't create. You convince yourself you're being mature, that it's love, that you're holding the relationship together. But what you're really doing is bargaining with your own dignity. Machiavelli wrote that a ruler who must plead for loyalty has already lost his throne. The same truth applies to a man who must plead for respect in a relationship, because when respect must be requested, it's already gone. It's like asking a servant to call you your highness while you're kneeling before him. The form remains, but the power is dead. The moment a man begins to chase her validation, the dynamic shifts. He is no longer the king of his domain. He becomes a subject in hers. He begins to filter his words, his behavior, even his dreams through her emotional approval. His strength becomes conditional, his peace leased, his confidence outsourced, and slowly he forgets who he was before her moods became his weather. At the beginning, she might still play along. She might comfort you with half-hearted reassurances, or say things like, "I didn't mean it that way." But inside, something fundamental changes. Women are instinctively drawn to strength, not arrogance, but the quiet certainty of a man who does not seek permission to exist. When she senses that your worth depends on her kindness, she begins to test how far she can push, not out of malice, but out of nature. Because if your strength can be shaken by her emotions, it is not strength, it is performance. And here lies the tragedy most men never see until it's too late. The more they try to win her respect through appeasement, the further they push it away. The moment you start over-explaining yourself, defending your worth, or waiting for her to validate your actions, you cease to be the man she fell for. The man she admired was decisive. He didn't justify himself. He didn't plead for understanding. He embodied it. When did men forget that silence is often more powerful than speech? That walking away from disrespect commands more reverence than staying to argue about it? Machiavelli would remind us that respect is not negotiated. It is declared through conduct. A ruler does not demand reverence. He behaves in a way that makes rebellion costly. So ask yourself, have your words become cheap because your boundaries have become invisible? You can sense when it's happening. You feel it in the tone of her voice when every sentence begins to sound like a correction. You feel it in your own hesitation when you start second-guessing your opinions before you speak. You feel it in the tension that builds when you try to prove that you're still worth her attention. But here's the cruel irony. The more you try to prove your worth, the more you confirm its absence. A man who knows his value never argues to defend it. His actions are his proof. His absence is his consequence. His silence is his boundary. But most men today have been taught to fight for love, even when love has become an illusion of servitude. They confuse endurance with devotion, and they call submission patience. Yet every act of begging chips away at the one thing she once admired, your self-possession. In Machiavellian terms, this is the slow erosion of authority. Once your authority is questioned, and you try to restore it with words instead of action, you lose not only command, but also credibility. A woman's respect, once lost, cannot be talked back into existence. It can only be re-earned through the return of your sovereignty, the quiet power of a man who does not chase, does not plead, and does not justify. So when you find yourself explaining to her why you deserve respect, pause. Ask yourself, when did you start needing permission to be respected? When did your value become something you had to convince her of instead of something she could feel in your presence? And if you continue to trade your silence for validation, how long before the man you once were becomes a stranger even to you? There's a moment when love starts to feel less like peace and more like a performance, when affection turns into calculation, when connection turns into strategy. You sense it in her tone, in the pauses between her words, in the way she withholds what used to flow so naturally. And as a man, you start to wonder, when did this relationship become a test you can never quite pass? Machiavelli once said that every ruler must know when he is being manipulated, for manipulation, once tolerated, becomes the new law of the land. The same is true in the empire of love. When a woman replaces gratitude with games, you are no longer sharing affection, you are negotiating attention. What once was spontaneous begins to feel staged. Every compliment has conditions. Every silence feels like punishment. And you, the man, find yourself dancing around invisible rules, terrified to step wrong. At first, her games may seem harmless. A delayed reply here, a little jealousy there. You tell yourself it's just her nature, that she's keeping things interesting. But slowly, the game becomes the relationship itself. You begin to crave her approval the way a ruler craves the loyalty of a treacherous court, always uncertain, always restless. She knows how to pull away just enough to make you chase and how to return just enough to make you hope. It's not love anymore, it's power disguised as passion. You start to lose yourself in the rhythm of her unpredictability. One day she's warm, the next she's distant. One moment you're her world, the next you're invisible. And the most dangerous part, you start adapting to it. You start thinking this instability is normal, that this is just how modern love works. But Machiavelli would remind you that a prince who adapts to chaos instead of mastering it becomes its servant. And many men today have become servants to women who learned that emotional chaos is control. Gratitude, you see, is the heartbeat of respect. A grateful woman nurtures her man's strength, celebrates his vision, and adds peace to his kingdom. But a woman consumed by games feeds off imbalance. She thrives on keeping you uncertain because uncertainty keeps you chasing. She will test your patience, question your loyalty, challenge your silence, not to connect, but to control. And every time you play along, every time you try to win her back, you reinforce the very game that drains you. The irony is cruel. The more a man tries to decode her behavior, the more predictable he becomes. He loses his spontaneity, his confidence, his command. He becomes reactive instead of intentional. And in her mind, the man who once led with calm authority now looks like a boy desperate for approval. That shift, that moment when she senses she can pull your strings, marks the death of polarity. What she once admired in you has now become a toy in her hands. Machiavelli warned rulers never to show desperation, for once you do, your subjects no longer fear your absence. Likewise, when a woman knows you will stay no matter how she treats you, she stops respecting your presence. She stops being inspired by your love because it costs her nothing to have it. And love without consequence becomes entertainment. But the question every man must ask himself is this: when did you start mistaking her manipulation for depth? When did you confuse instability with passion? Because true passion doesn't destroy your focus. It deepens it. It doesn't drain your strength. It magnifies it. The truth is, the longer you play her game, the weaker your position becomes. You start compromising your mission, adjusting your pace, losing your edge, all for a relationship that no longer gives you peace. And here lies the Machiavellian paradox of love. Sometimes the only way to win the game is to stop playing it. So look closely at her patterns. Are you dealing with a woman who loves your strength or one who loves controlling it? And if you've begun to accept manipulation as affection, how long before the game consumes the man you once were? There comes a time in every man's journey when he must choose between the path of purpose and the pull of passion. It's a test as old as history itself, the battle between the mission that defines you and the emotions that tempt you to abandon it. Machiavelli warned that a ruler's fall often begins not with defeat in war, but with distraction from within. And for men, that distraction often wears a beautiful face, speaks in soft tones, and asks, "Why do you always have to be so focused?" At first it feels flattering, someone wanting your time, your presence, your energy. She admires your drive, the way your eyes light up when you speak about your goals. She says she loves your ambition, but soon her love begins to compete with it. She wants more of your attention, more of your hours, more of your fire, and slowly your mission starts fading behind her emotions. You begin to notice how often you're explaining your dreams instead of building them. You start compromising your schedule, softening your edges, losing your rhythm. It doesn't happen all at once. It happens through small concessions, skipping the gym to talk, delaying your work to avoid an argument, toning down your intensity because it makes her uncomfortable. But every compromise is a brick removed from the foundation of your identity. And before long, the man who once led with purpose now finds himself led by approval. Machiavelli understood the fragility of power. He wrote that a ruler must never allow emotion to rule his judgment, for sentiment clouds strategy. Likewise, when a man lets emotion dictate his direction, he stops leading and starts reacting. A woman can sense this shift immediately. She may still say she loves you, but deep down, she no longer feels anchored by your presence. She feels burdened by your uncertainty. Because whether she admits it or not, a woman's deepest trust is built not on your affection, but on your focus. When your mission weakens, your aura changes. The fire in your words dulls. The certainty in your decisions wavers. You begin to hesitate before asserting yourself, afraid she might disapprove. And that hesitation, that small moment of self-doubt, is the beginning of your decline. Because the man who once drew her in with conviction now keeps her by compromise. And no woman respects a man who gives up his throne for comfort. A man's purpose is not meant to exclude love, but it must always lead it. Your mission is the gravitational force that gives meaning to everything you touch. Without it, even love becomes chaotic. A woman who truly loves you will orbit around that mission. She will be inspired by it. But a woman who competes with it will slowly dismantle it, piece by piece, until all that's left is the shell of who you once were. You might think giving her everything will make her love you more, but in truth, it makes her see you as less. Because the moment you abandon your mission for emotion, she feels the shift in power. She no longer follows your lead, she controls it. And no matter how much affection she gives, there's always a quiet disappointment behind her eyes, the realization that you traded your kingdom for her comfort. Machiavelli would say, "A ruler who abandons his fortifications in pursuit of peace will soon lose both." The same law applies to a man in love. If your emotional world consumes your strategic world, you lose your balance, and once balance is gone, respect soon follows. So ask yourself honestly, how many goals have you delayed in the name of love? How many dreams have you silenced to keep someone close? And if the price of her affection is your purpose, what kind of man will you become once your mission no longer belongs to you? There comes a moment, silent, heavy, and unspoken, when a man realizes that staying has cost him more than leaving ever could. It's the point where the love that once gave him strength now drains him, where every conversation feels like negotiation, and every day feels like an echo of the man he used to be. He looks in the mirror and barely recognizes the eyes staring back, not because he's changed for the better, but because he's compromised too much for too long. Machiavelli taught that power is not always reclaimed through force. Sometimes it is restored through withdrawal. In the art of statecraft, the wise ruler knows when to step back, not in defeat, but in strategy. The same principle governs the art of love. There are moments when walking away is not an act of surrender, but of sovereignty, because to remain in a place where your presence is no longer valued is to become a prisoner in your own kingdom. A man often stays long after he knows he should go. He tells himself it's love, that things will change, that she will see his loyalty and remember what they once had. But love built on memory cannot survive in the present. The truth he avoids is that he's no longer staying for her. He's staying for the version of himself that existed when she still believed in him. And yet, every day he remains, that version dies a little more. Leaving, for a man, is not just physical, it's psychological. It means detaching from the illusion that his worth depends on how deeply he can endure pain. It means realizing that silence is sometimes more powerful than explanation, that distance can communicate what words cannot. A man who leaves with dignity leaves an echo behind, an echo that reminds the other person that he was not weak, just wise enough to walk when peace was no longer possible. But the world has taught men to fear this kind of strength. Society praises endurance but mocks departure. It tells a man to fix what's broken, even when what's broken is him. And so he stays, arguing, proving, hoping. Yet every time he does, he teaches her one dangerous truth, that his love will tolerate anything, that his boundaries are negotiable, that she can keep taking and he will keep giving. Until one day she stops respecting him, not because she hates him, but because she knows he no longer has the courage to leave. Machiavelli would say that a ruler who cannot abandon a failing alliance invites his own downfall. The same truth governs relationships. The longer you stay where your presence is not honored, the more your authority decays. And when authority decays, love turns to pity. She begins to see you not as the man she once admired, but as the man who cannot let go. And no woman can love the man she pities. When you walk away, you do not just leave her, you return to yourself. You reclaim the silence that once centered you, the solitude that sharpened you, the focus that defined you. You remember what it feels like to breathe without tension, to move without asking permission, to live without proving your worth. That's when you understand, walking away was never about losing her. It was about finding you again. But leaving requires strength that few possess. It demands you to face the fear of emptiness, to walk into solitude with faith that it will rebuild you, not destroy you. It's easy to stay and blame fate. It's harder to leave and face yourself, because once you go, there's no guarantee she'll follow. And maybe that's the test, to see if your peace matters more than her presence. So the question becomes, when you finally feel your spirit growing quieter, your ambition dimming, and your pride dissolving, will you have the courage to walk away? Or will you stay, knowing that every moment you remain in her world, you disappear a little more from your own? There comes a point in every man's evolution when he must choose between comfort and sovereignty, between the fleeting warmth of affection and the eternal fire of self-respect. Machiavelli would remind us that power, whether in kingdoms or in love, is not granted. It is maintained through discipline, awareness, and the courage to act when emotion demands retreat. To walk away is not weakness, it is mastery. It is the moment when a man stops chasing validation and starts reclaiming his silence. It's the recognition that not every love deserves a lifetime, and not every connection deserves to be saved. Some relationships are sent not to complete you, but to confront you, to expose where you have abandoned your own throne. You see, a man's true test is not how long he can hold on, but how fearlessly he can let go when the cost of staying becomes his peace. The ability to detach with dignity is the highest form of emotional intelligence. It means you have learned to lead yourself, even when your heart begs for surrender. So, remember this truth. Love her if it strengthens your purpose. Walk away if it weakens it. Because a man who knows when to leave is not running from love. He is returning to his power. And in the end, it's not the woman who defines the man, but the choices he makes in the silence after love has fallen apart. Will you be the man who stays trapped in her storm, or the one who walks back into his own kingdom, calm, centered, and free? Save your life, but it won't save both.